Nothing beats election day, whether it's India or the United States or anywhere in the world for that matter. The nervousness, the hope, the suspense. It's the purest and simplest expression of freedom, of democracy. Today is that day in America. Polls are open across the country. Americans are lining up eagerly to vote. Around 81 million people have voted early this time, meaning they voted before election day through postal ballots. 81 million Americans have done that. Chances are an equal number will vote in person today. Now turnout is typically low in the US. It's often between 50 and 60%. The last election in 2020 actually set a record, 66%, which was the highest since the year 1900. Let's see how it goes this time. I know all the stories are about Harris and Trump, but that's not the only race today. 34 seats in the US Senate are up for grabs. So are 400 plus seats in the House of Representatives. So voters are not just electing their next president, they're also electing members of Congress. Basically, multiple elections on the same day. Also, fun fact, people don't vote directly for the president, they vote for state electors. These electors together make up what is called the Electoral College. And the numbers vary from state to state. For example, Florida has 30 votes, Michigan has 15, Pennsylvania has 19 votes, and so on. All these votes add up to 538. If you win a state, you win all of its electoral votes. The halfway mark in this election is 270. Once you reach that mark, you're president. As we speak, all 50 states are voting. Most of them have long-standing party loyalties, like California, which votes for Democrats. It's called a blue state. Or Texas, which is always Republican, so it's called a red state. These results are never in doubt. So it all comes down to the swing states. States that can change hands from election to election. This time there are 7 of them. And we're talking about a big country here. It's spread across 6 different time zones. So the logistics are complicated. You also have long-standing traditions associated with voting. As always, a town in New Hampshire kicked things off. They don't wait till morning. They begin voting at midnight. This town has just 6 registered voters, just 6 voters. So the whole thing was over quickly. 3 people voted for Harris. The remaining 3 voted for Trump. Even Stephen, much like the national polls. Right now, the focus is on peaceful voting. A lot of states are worried about political violence. 19 of them have put the National Guard on standby. In Nevada, counting centers have been fenced. In Arizona, drones and snipers are on alert. Can you imagine that? Snipers on election duty. It tells you how tense these battles are. A lot of Americans just want to be done with it, it seems. The constant ads, the threats and added security, the polarization, all of it has overwhelmed voters. But I'm afraid there is no quick end. Normally, the results are declared a few hours after the polls close. The timing depends on where you live. In Georgia, polls close at 7 p.m. In North Carolina, they close at 7:30. In Pennsylvania, 8 p.m., all the way up to 11 p.m. in California and Oregon. But don't worry, you don't have to track all of them. For example, California may stop polling at 11 p.m., but everyone knows that Harris will win it. So the focus is mainly on the swing states, the 7 swing states, and they too have different timings. In Georgia, officials say 75% of the votes will be counted in the first 2 hours. So expect quick results there. But in Pennsylvania, it is expected to take 24 hours. Even more if the vote is close. The winner must have a lead of more than 0.5%. If not, there will be automatic recounting. In Michigan, counting is already underway. These are early mail-in ballots, but the final results are expected only tomorrow. Wisconsin is same, and so is Arizona. If the race is close, we may see legal challenges as well, maybe even recounts, in which case more time will be lost. So here's the bottom line. If the verdict is decisive, we may see a clear indication tonight. But if the race is tight, as the polls indicate it will be, get ready for a long week. We saw that in 2020. The election happened on Tuesday, but Biden was declared a winner only on Saturday, which raises another question. Who decides the winner? Interestingly, it's the US media. Back home in India, we have an election commission. They tabulate and declare winners. But here in the US, there is no such body. Each state and each county has its own election officials and its own rules. These officials count and release tallies. Most media agencies have their own election team. These employees scan through the incoming voting tallies And they don't just look at the raw numbers, they look at the demography, the type of ballot, past voting patterns, and the number of uncounted votes. Based on all of this, they declare winners in each state. The Associated Press is considered the best in town. They began calling elections way back in 1848. Let's see what's in store this time. Also, what are the candidates up to? Kamala Harris spent election eve in Pennsylvania. Her final rally was in Philadelphia. She summoned all her celebrity supporters for this. Oprah Winfrey, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, all of them stood alongside Kamala Harris. The vice president stuck to her months-long message. She talked about hope and freedom.
Generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, the baton is in our hands. And to everyone who continues to pour so much of yourselves into this campaign as an extension of your love for our country, I thank you for your time, your effort, and the heart you are putting into this.
These final rallies are not about policies, they're about energy. You need to push your supporters to the polling booth. It's as simple as that. And that's what Harris did. She visited a Puerto Rican restaurant in Pennsylvania. She also visited some voters in their homes. Take a look at this.
Welcome. It's good to see you. How have you been? Okay,
Sweet plantains, you got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
these
I'll have
sweet plantains. I want cassava, yellow rice, and the pork. That's what I'll have. I love meeting.
Donald Trump chose a different strategy. He hammered down on policies. Trump's final rally was in the swing state of Michigan. Before that, he too was in Pennsylvania. Trump played his usual hits on immigration and tariffs, sometimes with sharp rhetoric.
And on day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in American history. We're going to get them out. We have to. And I'm hereby calling for the death penalty for any migrant that kills an American citizen or a law enforcement officer.
No Trump rally is complete without some fun, though. We saw that in Michigan, where Trump compared himself to some historical figures like Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill.
And I said to them, does that mean I'm better than Abraham Lincoln and George? What? Yes, sir, you're better than both of them. No, when Winston Churchill, he was a great speaker, he was actually a stutterer, a tremendous stutterer, and he became one of the greatest orators. But when Winston Churchill made a mistake, he didn't go, excuse me, and go back.
For Trump, this was a big night, his last presidential campaign. If he wins again, it would be his last term. If he loses, he will be 82 by the next election cycle. Chances are the party would have moved on by then. But Trump fired a parting shot at his successor too. He said the Republican nominee in 2028 would struggle to fill a ballroom, let alone a stadium. I guess that's Donald Trump for you, as competitive as ever. Of course, it's all up to the voters now. Both candidates have returned to their home base. Trump is hosting an election party in Florida. Meanwhile, Harris is back here in D.C. She's hosting a party at Harvard University. The whole world will be watching the results eagerly, and we'll be right here tracking every update for you. Washington is all set for a presidential battle like no other.
In less than 90 days, it's either going to be him or me sitting in the Oval Office.
Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump.
All we want is one simple thing. Get out on Tuesday.
A vice president versus a former president. As we head towards election night, Vantage will be live from the heart of the action. Speaking to voters in this final stretch,
I'm still very undecided.
Very close presidential race.
tracking the campaigns as they make the last push. From exclusive ground reports to in-depth analysis, this is your one-stop destination for the presidential race. Join us on this special edition of Vantage, live from the White House in Washington, D.C.